this is going to be an interesting podcast, Renee. What is it that we're going to talk about?
I'm excited about this one. We're going to talk about how to conference and how to do it successfully because we've gone to many conferences the last several years and speak at many. And so we've seen them, the good, the bad, and the ugly on the conference circuit. So today we're going to talk about like how do you as a person conference and why do you go to conferences? What can you get out of it? How to do them well? Because I know there's been times we've done them well and they're very profitable. And then there's other ones we've gone to and we're like, what was that? Let's don't do it again. But before we get there, we're in the middle of May. So what's happening on the farm?
It's back to mowing. I got to mow the grass again, Renee. And this drives my wife crazy. She's like, why do you mow out there? I'm like, well, you have to mow. It's just what you do, right? Like you have to just keep up on because you have to plant. There's real work to do, but then I go out and have to make sure that the grass is manicured as well around the buildings. It keeps animals away. There's reasons.
Yeah, if you're like my husband though, mowing for him, even though I live in an HOA without mowing, he mows the
Mhm.
church lawn, but he does it, I think, because it's a box he can check in his head. He can see the start point, he can see the end point, and he can feel like he's done something successful. And to be fair, you're going to be shocked, but when I asked him about mowing, he says nobody can talk to him on that because he can't hear them. It's his introverted way of being able to get away from people and just sit on a mower and nobody could talk to him for that period of time. It cracks me up. So I get it. I actually loved mowing as a kid. I learned that was one of the tasks I actually wanted to take on. We had about 5 acres growing up and I liked mowing. I did a lot of push mowing for the exercise. And then once I got on the riding mower, I think I learned to ride the riding mower before I drove a car, which helped transition into driving a car. So I actually really enjoyed it. So I get it. It's to me still quote fun. Now it gets hard when it just rains so much and it just keeps coming. So
Yeah.
you're just like, I just did
Yeah.
this, I just did this. But
Yeah.
I used to enjoy it and I got some sunshine and whatever. So today what we're going to talk about is conferencing. And we know people and people go and there's ways to not do it correctly. And we're going to talk about I think we should start with that first. And then like the ways you should do it because let's talk about the ways that doesn't really work. If you go and just sit with your own friends and talk about the things you already know and talk about the office and the you only talk to them, you sit with them, you dinner with them, you do everything just with your own people, you have missed the entire boat.
So let's go back one step, Renee.
Yeah.
How is it that we know this list that we put together? So let's just remind everyone. Since
Oh, for heaven's sake.
2020, do you have any idea? I just counted while you were
Oh,
talking.
good.
Do you know
Good.
how many conferences? This isn't even how many we attended, just how many conferences we spoke at. So that means we
Oh,
attended the conference and spoke. There's numerous conferences, probably the same amount that we just attended. Just
oh,
want to
man.
guess a number?
I don't know, 30?
100.
Oh,
So it's probably several hundred conferences, right? So
wow.
I'm not embellishing at all. Like I have the list of ones since 2020,
Yeah.
where we've spoken at a conference, right? So
Wow.
when we tell these things, it's because we've experienced them firsthand. So
Firsthand.
I've walked up to a table and sat down and learned everything that's happening in an organization, and that Sally called off again today and they can't staff the residential facility. And that was the first 20 minutes of the keynote speaker.
That's not good. So I have been at conferences where I am just floored that whoever is speaking is speaking. Just the lack of talent or ability to speak, that there wasn't some sort of a screening project process. Um, and it's distracting. It's super distracting. And so what we're here to tell you guys is even if you get yourselves in one of those, we're going to talk today about how to still make the conference successful. And the
Yeah.
conference being successful is not always the speakers. It is not always the subject matter you thought you were going for. You might get more out of the conference doing it a different way. And we're going to talk today about how to really get good out of a conference because we've been to many. And in a lot of cases, we don't need to be there for the speakers anymore because we are a speaker. So we've really learned how to make the most out of a conference when we're not really there for the content. Because we can go to rural, so let's give an example. We go to a rural health conference, say the state of Louisiana, doesn't matter, whatever state. A lot of that content isn't going to apply to us. It's just not because we don't live there. We're not in the day to day. The billing is different, whatever. So the content, so the listening to the speaker part may not be for us, but we've gotten really valuable things out of that conference, out of Louisiana and many, many other conferences that we've attended. So that's the background of this. It's like, how do you go and get something good?
Although we did follow one of the national folks from SAMHSA to 8 different conferences one year. And so we knew his presentation better of what was happening federally in his federal rundown than I think he did. So it got laughable at one point. He's like, oh, good to see you guys again.
Nice to see it. That's funny. That is very true. All right. So when you're going to a conference, where do you start? And again, we don't start with just hanging out with our friends. And I guess I should couch this. Maybe you just need a break from work and you're going just for girlfriend time and to get out of the office and to have fun. Okay. That's not normally why you go to a conference, but maybe in some form or fashion, don't tell your business that that's what you're up to. Though that they're not sending you to the conference for that. But I could guess that maybe there's times that that's what you're doing. But if you're really going to the conference and you're supposed to get something out of it, let's talk about how do we do that. So, Jason, how do you start off to like a conference to really be successful?
Well, you set goals, right? Like when I go
Yeah.
to a conference, I have to set goals for myself because it is easy to kind of be like, "Ah, I don't feel like conferencing today, right? Because you have to mentally prepare to go to a conference. It means,
Mhm.
and we're going to talk about making connections. You want to leave there with some business cards, with some follow-up contacts. You need to have some goals of what is your objective of going to that conference? Do you want to learn something? Do you need CEUs? Do you need CEUs in a specific area? Do you want to learn about a specific subject? And are you going to match up what you attend to make sure that you walk away with the information that you're seeking out to get there? You need to write that down and you need to go there with the intent of, am I going to meet these objectives? And then when you're done with the conference, take a look at that and say, did I meet what I wanted to meet by coming to this conference today?
Yep. And so when we go as a team, our parole board goes to an annual conference every year, and there's lots of breakouts. And a lot of conferences, if it's a bigger conference, may have 4 things going on at one time. So our group looks at that as an agenda in advance so that we can try to divide and conquer also to make sure that we get all the information, the best information. Now, sometimes there might not be a lot that apply, and we may end up doubling up in the same room. Or like last year, I got to present at one of those breakouts, and all of my team wanted to come watch that. So they all came to mine, and we missed all the rest of them. That can happen. But generally, we do the divide and conquer. And so that way, if you're trying to bring value to your organization, you don't all sit in the same one. You go to different things throughout the day. And so that you can bring back information. And for those of you that want your employer to pay you to go to conferences, that's how you do it. Bring back the good ideas, bring back the connections, and show them that it was valuable to them. The state wasn't super sure that we should be in this conference, and that's exactly what we did. I can show you a huge list in paroling of what happened because we went to the conference and all of the people that came out of that, the connections that have come out of that, and the train that has happened since. But it's because we went with what you just said, goals in mind. And we're going to go again here in a little bit, and we're going to do the same thing. It's like, okay, what this year, where are we, and what kind of information do we want to look at? So the next thing you had on the list was about meeting people. So what do you mean when you're talking about meeting people? You mentioned business cards. Talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about networking. And I can tell you the most valuable part of a conference isn't necessarily that gold nugget you're going to find in the sessions, right? You just have to learn one thing in a 40-minute session to make it worth your while. What's going to be even more important are the relationships and the connections you make that you can follow up with and learn from people after the conference. And that really comes down to how many business cards you take home with you. And this is an example of it's still good to have an old-fashioned business card. I mean, we can do e-contacts and all of those things, but I have a stack right here next to me of all of the business cards I've gotten in conferences, and this is just probably the last couple of years, right? Those are all the people I've met. And so I can always go back to, all right, I remember I met somebody at this conference. They might be able to help me now. And so those connections matter. From those business cards, I then connect with people on LinkedIn. If I don't do it right away while I'm standing there with them, because then it keeps them in front of me and I stay in front of them. That's what networking is. And we really need to take that seriously because that's how we learn from other people, how they're doing it in other areas.
If I was talking about that conference in Louisiana just this week, one of the ladies that I met there that I've talked to once before connected me to a different group of people, actually connected our business. So I
Yeah.
made sure that Jason and Brent have
Yeah.
it. But with additional people that she thinks that we would have a valuable conversation about topics that we have in common. And that could lead to potential business. But there's a lady that works in the field and she's kind of behavioral health adjacent. She does more workforce development, but she's met other people and like, we thought of all of you, you all should have a good conversation. And so we're still getting referrals and still getting ongoing conversations because we met that person. And that happens to be, if you remember when we did the conferences, the series on conferences, this is the one where somebody was following me out the door. I was trying to leave because I was exhausted after getting off the stage and I had a line of people. Well, it's really good thing that I was in a good mood and did all that because it's continuing to provide fruit and we're continuing to meet new people. So one of the things that I think is one of my pet peeves at conferences are when people come and just stand in the hallway the whole day
Yeah.
and on their phone, still doing work
Yep.
from the office and not even present in the moment.
Yep.
That doesn't make sense to me at all.
No, if you're paying money to go to a conference and you're probably billing your business for mileage or even airfare to get to the conference and food, be at the conference. If your workload is so heavy that you can't be present at the conference, you shouldn't be going to the conference because you're not going to get value for yourself. So you have to set boundaries. If you have work things going on and you want to be at a session, you have to say, you know what, I can't take this call right now. I have open 4 to 5. Anything that we need to talk about, we need to talk about at that time. I get it. I've done prep for other conferences at a conference before. Sometimes you have to work at a conference, but it doesn't mean you give up the opportunity to learn at that conference. You still have to be present during the time you're at the conference.
Yep. And I really like this next one, the dress and pack smart. So ladies, I'm going to
Yes.
tell you a trick. Take a lap blanket. I carry a bag with a blanket. I
Yep.
freeze to death in conferences. And I don't care if I'm in the South because they love the air conditioning. I don't care if you're in the North. They love the air conditioning too. And so I cannot tell you how many women have stopped me and are like, oh my gosh, you have a blanket. It's not a big one. It's one of the sizes that's actually like the airplane blanket size. And I just tuck it in my bag. And first of all, I can use it on a plane to keep myself from freezing that way. But I carry that baby everywhere. And I'm telling you, I've had people ask if they could buy it. I've had people ask if they could borrow it because it is cold. So layers are important. We, as speakers, you don't have any clue how warm it's going to be on a stage. And there's sometimes it's freezing on the stage, and sometimes you get hot because there's lights and stuff. So you have to be able to dress accordingly and to think about it. And if you're an attendee and you're thinking you're just going to sit all day, you have to think about that. And maybe you're more active during the week. This may be a lot of sitting. So how do you stay comfortable? I've seen people bring like things to cushions kind of things to sit on because they had bad spine or different things. I mean, you have to think about, okay, how do I feel comfortable? Because if you're not comfortable, you're not paying attention. And so how do you help yourself learn is to be comfortable and to bring what
Yep.
you need to make that so.
I've taken business casual to a whole new level, right? Like, you have to be present there, but you have to be able to come and go. Like I like to get walks in, because you are sitting for a long time. So I want to make sure I have shoes that are comfortable, that I
Yes.
can, get out and go do something in the afternoon. It also is as how do you get there and how do a lot of times you have to fly to a conference or, you're riding with other people. Pack light. I've really gotten better at navigating those things. And it's always going to be you check out of the hotel and have to go to the conference all day. So what are you going to do with your stuff? Right. So the less
Mhm.
stuff you have to cart around or put in check bags somewhere or whatever you have to do, the easier it is to navigate because those other parts of the conference could be stressful. Sometimes traveling is stressful for people. Sometimes, when you leave a conference and you have a 6-hour drive to get back home, are you really paying attention to that last day of the conference? So try to, make your conference experience be as comfortable and normal as possible.
Yep. And I don't see this one on the list, but if you've been on our podcast very long, you can tell Jason is more extroverted and loves to talk to everybody and anybody. Renee is not. So I take advantage of like the bingo cards, the
Mhm.
things. I remember the first one of the big times I did that, I ended up at the Illinois Rural Health Conference by myself the first time. And I knew myself where I would sit by myself the whole day and just not network because it's comfortable. I had my laptop, had my phone. I could have just been in my own little world, but I needed to be building business. And those original conferences are what got business now for us today. So it's planted seeds that needed to be planted, but I had to make myself do it. So sometimes those business card, those things are gifts to you. If you're not comfortable doing it, it gives you a reason to go talk to the people at the table because it's nothing else. It's like, hey, would you sign my card? So you can talk about what they do, but it also gives you information. So Jason and I use that now talking to those vendors that are there sometimes before we get on stage as speakers. It gives us an insight to what's going on in the room to talk about. Now, granted, that has come back to bite us once where the lady says, "You took everything I just said and put it in your keynote." And we're like, "Yep."
Yep.
Because if you're walking into a place and you're not from there and you want to know how does crisis services work, because we're going to talk about how it should work, we need those anecdotes. And so we can use those vendors to leverage to get information of who's there.
You're,
The other thing,
you're
one more
giving away
piece
our
of it.
secrets, Renee. These are our
Well,
secrets.
one more
So,
piece of it is asking who's in the audience.
yeah.
You need to know who's there. And if you're speaking, if you're a
Yeah.
contender, you still might want to know who's there so that you know who you want to go meet. But if you can get with the vendor, and even if you're not the one that gets the list, vendors have those lists almost always. So another reason for the bingo conversation is to be like, hey, you're a vendor. Did you get the list of who's here today? Can you tell me, is it more CEOs or is it more providers or is it peers or who is it? Because if you're, again, a speaker, you want to tailor your message to your crowd. And so that bingo card has a lot of value in it besides free crap. Now, you don't have to take the stuff. You could win the bingo and give it away, and your table mates will be thrilled. And so I do that a lot because maybe we're flying in and I don't have the space. So don't think about it as don't play bingo because I can't take the stuff home. Think about it as play bingo, make the connections. And then if you win stuff, keep what you can, hand off the rest because you might get a gift card that fits just perfect in that carry on.
That's right. As you're going around meeting people, I mean, even as an attendee, you have goals. If you've set goals, then there's certain people you want to talk to. And so you want to
Mhm.
figure out who is in that audience, who do I want to talk to? But when you're talking, our next tip is don't overshare, right? You don't want to
Mhm.
overshare too much because there are vendors there are people there who will use information to try to sell you stuff or sell you organization things, right? Or they may take your ideas. You don't know what they're doing. You have to figure out if they're in alignment with you first, right? So don't overshare too much right out of the gate. And that's sometimes kind of difficult to do. I'm a big sharer. And so sometimes I probably share too much. Thanks, Renee. And so, it's thinking about what is that balance? How do you keep your work secure, but still figure out how can you partner with people?
Yeah. And I may be on the opposite extreme where I don't share enough. And so there is a balance there because I'm more like, it's no business of yours. So I'm not the person that puts my personal emails on everybody's individual tables to be on their mailing list, unless there are some really killer vendors some places that I'm like, I've never heard of what you're doing. That's really cool. I want to know more. And so I'm judicious about that. I'm not the person that just gives out my email everywhere because later I want to be able to actually get value from it. And so, you have to just be thoughtful about that. It's a balancing act for sure. Because otherwise you just do get inundated and you have no idea. One of the things we talk about all the time, Jason, is about staying on our regular routines. And so
Yes.
we're in a process just this week where we're supposed to be speaking pretty early, but like 3+ hours away from here. And we're going to go the night before, even though that's inconvenient, so that we can stay on schedule because it's so important. I'd rather be there tomorrow a little early so that you can work out, maybe do whatever it is, and be in the right mindset to be on the stage. And if otherwise, if you're rushing to the last minute and trying to get there that morning, bad things have happened. Just bad things have happened for me. And I've learned enough now that I try to book extra time. I tell a story about New North Dakota, my very first contract up there. I went up an extra day early because I'd never been, and it ended up a massive snowstorm. So I was bidding on a project. Everybody else had to bid online because they didn't make it in because that next day the airport's closed.
Yep.
I won because I made the extra effort to go the extra day early
Yep.
to see what I got myself into. So I've had experiences that way. And even though it's inconvenient because you're not at home another night, sometimes you have to make that adjustment so that your day can stay on schedule. You can eat breakfast, you can get your mocha, you can be in a good headspace when you hit the stage. And I don't think we think about that enough.
Yeah, and as an attendee, it's just as important, right? Because then
Yeah.
you can check your emails, take care of some of the things you need to take care of, and then you can be present at the conference and still take care of your own personal needs as well. And so, sometimes we try to cut costs of, well, I can just get up at 4 a.m. and drive there. Um, no, don't do that, right? Because that ends up usually being more detrimental than helpful.
Yeah. And the last tip I think we'll talk about is just making sure there's a lot of deadlines along all of this. And so there, you're going to want to take advantage of early bird if budget's an issue. So, pay attention to those things. Conferences are kind of cyclical. We now, because we speak at so many, know there's spring conferences, fall conferences, and the information comes out about the same time every year. The early bird ends about the same time every year. So if you're in tune to the cycle of what you would like to do, they give you plenty of notice. And often, if you pay attention to that and register early, you get discounts on your hotel too, in addition to your registration or whatever other kinds of perks. And so it's worth it to pay attention and to have to do a little bit of extra work so that you can do that savings. And then it's not as a big of a deal if you need to stay that extra night early so
Right.
that you are refreshed to go to the conference because you got the discount up front. And so thinking about those kind of pieces are important as well.
And remember, if the conference has the type of people you want to connect with as attendees, there's lots of conferences out there. I mean, we're kind of moving into data, but there's going to be 2 million business events this year in the United States of America. And so there's lots and lots of conferences. There are some really, really expensive conferences, and there's some free conferences. And so you have to decide which ones are the best fit for you. I'm not always going to say you need to go to that exclusive, really expensive hospital conference that happens every year because you may be able to get just as much value out of a conference that costs $100 if it's meeting with the people in your region or your area that are the people you want to connect with, because again, it's about making those connections. But think about every association across the country. There's 315,000 meetings, conferences, and exhibitions annually that are hosted by different associations. And I think about a lot of the stuff we go to is Rural Health, Critical Access Hospital Association, Rural Health Associations, Behavioral Health Associations, Substance Use Associations. Um, a lot of those associations, according to the data, 88% of them host some type of annual training or meeting that have an average of 803 people in attendance. So those are great places to go and network and connect with people.
Yeah. So the next part of this conversation is just going to be flat out fun. We're going to talk about some of the crazy things that you can do at conferences because since we've been to hundreds, and we do mean hundreds, we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly of activities. And there are a lot of them that are fun, but you get a lot of opportunities that you can do extra things. And so sometimes that's from everything from cultural different things you could do, educational types of things, and just flat out fun because they want to put on something interesting for you to do while you're in town. So, Jason, kick us off. What are some of those things that are just fun, the bonus benefits of attending conferences?
Well, one that I've actually I look forward to because it's a conference I'm lucky enough to go to, the Indiana Rural Health Association conference. I think it's going to be my third or fourth year attending that conference this year. It's in French Lick, Indiana. That's right, the home of Larry Bird. But there's a beautiful, gorgeous, historic hotel complex there. The conference I go to hosts a 5K on the second day of the conference every year and is really well attended. They hand out medals. And I really look forward to doing that 5K because it gets me out and gets me in my exercise routine. And I wish more conferences would do healthy options like that because we're going to talk about a few coming up here where conferences don't always promote healthy lifestyle choices. right?
Right.
But some conferences really do. And so some of those extra things, those extra activities that are going to be, in the conference brochure, take advantage of some of those things because you still get to network with people you might not run into in the conference. And so you're making connections by doing these extra social activities. And I know it's a commitment sometimes, but it's worth doing the social activities. And so usually there's always a social the night before the conference that's hosted by the vendors. And so, yes, there's usually, open bar or, a cash bar, but it's kind of a mixer. And sometimes people kind of roll their eyes and go, oh, it's so hard just to go walk up to strangers and have a conversation. It is hard to do that. I even struggle. I'm an extrovert, but sometimes I'm like, I just don't want to go people tonight, right? I may have traveled all day. Um, but I force myself, right? I force myself to get down there, and it's always really interesting. Meet some great people, hand out some business cards.
Yep, I think about some of the other ones that we've done, and I'll tell you a story about one. So it was the social the opening night, and it was like hors d'oeuvres and drinks in a conference room. And one of the big vendors that was the sponsor of that activity, it was a young lady, and that was her job with this bigger company. And her job was that. And my husband and I ended up standing at a table just talking to her, and nobody else was talking to the vendor. That has turned into an almost $1 million contract with us with the state to build a tool that we need for releasing people. And it started by conferencing and having a conversation with a lady who took back my information to her company and was like, this state is doing this, they could use our help. And it turned into a big, big deal. And so it all started again from a conference. And so, and it was that social part at the beginning, and it was the extra at the beginning, the welcome in thing. And I don't always love those. When I'm in traveling from the day, I don't always I love the welcome, but I get why we do it. And so if you're there, and again, if that was your goal to meet the people that could help, in our case, we were like, we need help. Who can we meet? And from lots of different things. And so it turned into that's exactly the goals that we set for ourselves. But there's also been a lot of really wild ones. And so one of the ones we like to talk about is the booze cruise. Would you like to tell everybody about this? They don't call it a booze cruise, but if you've ever watched the American version of The Office, it's exactly the same as the booze
Yeah, we've
cruise.
done two booze cruises, haven't we, at the
We have
same
done
conference?
two. We have
Their
done two.
their opening social is literally putting everyone on a boat and sending you out in the middle of the lake. Um, and yes, there's alcohol involved, and drink tickets, and the captain having you do stupid people
Oh,
tricks to earn more tickets.
yes.
It's everything that's wrong, and it was an HR conference.
It was
That's what
hilarious.
blows my mind. That it's everything wrong with everything HR shouldn't do is done on that boat.
Yes.
Um, to
At
a
the
T.
HR conference. It was the
Yeah,
best. But the
it
coolest
was.
part, to be fair, was we met everybody on the boat by the time it was
We
over.
did.
And there were people in industries I'd never heard of about the tunnels
Yep.
underground where you keep wine and cheese,
Yeah.
and I don't even know. I learned about so much stuff because I
Yep.
just met people, because after a couple hours you're best buddies with everybody on the boat.
It's
So
true.
it's a really good one for socializing, even though it's totally wild.
I guess if we're going to keep that theme, there is a health conference that actually hosts a donut beer run where you actually do laps around a pool. Depending, obviously the conference moves from different city to city, and so sometimes it's in a park, sometimes in a pool, and yes, it involves eating donuts and shotgunning beers, and that is a hosted event, and you get a medal for it. I won't tell you who in this room came in second and got a medal, but we'll just let you assume which one of us that was.
I didn't go to the conference, so I'll let you know that it was not me. So
Still have
then
it.
we got to
Yep.
go to this agriculture conference, and I got to keynote an agriculture conference because we were
Yeah.
talking about rural health, and I brought Jason along for the ride because I was like, well, anybody at an agriculture conference keynoting should not be me. So I
Yeah.
bring Jason along, and we got to go to really cool stuff agriculture wise. So you want to talk
Did.
about those?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get to go on tours, and so sometimes they take tour groups out to see local things in communities, depending on what kind of conference. This conference, we were able to go through a factory where they make John Deere sprayers and learn about how they're produced, where they go around the world. these were really high security events. It was really amazing. We got to go to Kemin Industries, which is a leading manufacturer of different pharmaceutical and chemical products. Like a lot of stuff in the food that you eat that maintains its freshness. It was developed by Kemin Industries, and it's kind of a hidden secret. One of the main sites is right here in our backyard. And we were able to visit the World Food Prize building and went to an event at the World Food Prize building. So sometimes you get into places you would never normally get into by taking advantage of some of these extra things that happen. You can go to historical sites. There's lots of things that conferences can open your eyes to that can be really exciting and
Yeah.
and fun and educational at the same time.
Yep. And we've seen these done well and things done not so good. But if they've done it well, they will have maybe a restaurant in the community that they like, that's a good place to go and have maybe a social event there. We've done some of that sometimes with like a trivia night. And you don't always have to participate in the activity to go and meet the people. So sometimes throughout the day at the conference, as you've met people, maybe not get to talk to them as much because you're running from place to place, but you could say, hey, are you going to the social tonight? We'll hook up there. And that again, for a different conference, that's what brought us to some of the current contracts we have. It started out with additional extended dinner conversations at a structured social event at the local neighborhood restaurant where they catered food for us for that evening. So you can get the free food, but then have more conversations about we've met some architects that way that were cool people. So the vendors come too, so you get to meet the vendors on a more personal side. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad. But you get to meet all the people and know, like, really see them kind of more with their, unbuttoned collar and then their jeans to see if it's somebody you really want to do business with. You can't always gauge that so much in a conference. You might have to get them out more social to see if they're somebody that really vibes the way you're thinking. And so that's been very helpful. And we've done those events as well.
Absolutely. I think we've hit everything on the list, right? I mean, it really comes down to, what are you willing to do and put into it? Because you're going to get out of a conference what you put into it, right? And so there are ridiculous things you can do. And sometimes you just kind of have to amuse yourself. I know we were in a city in the South, and we were trying to just eat supper and kind of download what we learned at the conference. And all of a sudden, the waitress came up to us and said, "We're really sorry, but there's a birthday party going on here, and there might be a lot of noise because she's coming in." And so we ended up being part of, was it Mona's 80th birthday party?
Oh, I
And her
think.
whole family had rented the back half of the restaurant, and somehow
Oh,
it overflowed into the front half of the restaurant where we were just trying to have supper. We ended up with photos of Mona's 80th birthday party and ended up posting them on her Facebook page. And then found ourselves at two other birthday parties on that same trip. So then it became a theme. And so we find ways to amuse ourselves sometimes, Renee, that just
yep.
are random, right?
Yep. And we always have to have good barbecue and go to a brewery and
Right.
check out what's going on the local taps. And so, if nothing else, if we can't, but again, you maybe have an agenda of what you're going to do, and you may pick somebody else up to come with. I've gone to conferences and be like, hey, I'm going to go eat pizza. I hear it's great over here. Do you have anything? And so we'll share an Uber, share a cab, pick up somebody else that you thought was interesting, that you thought was fun, or you've spent some time with that day, and be like, hey, you want to join me for dinner? Meet some really great people that way. I'm very serious with my parole work. We have a lot of support and help coming our way because I've done this. I have spent time at supper and dinner and lunch with different people and just sit next to people. So I'm at a conference, but you know who the power players are at the conference, or the people that are working for the folks that are the foundations or whatever. And if you have that goal in mind, you sit with them and chat and learn what they're doing. And if they have research dollars they need to spend, is like, how could we work together? And that has really blossomed. And but it is all from conferences where I met any of these people. I would know none of them had I not spent time really working a conference. And so that is one thing that personal business is growing that way. Even government business is booming that way. And so it is a system that works. We have gotten this down to a fine art at this point of knowing what we want out of a conference, who we're going to talk to, who is the person in the room we need to meet, and where we're coming out with it. And so we do it with a very different intentional mindset. It's not just for a getaway at the hotel, at the pool. And so, Jason, did you have anything else you wanted to add to that before we close?
No, I mean, I was just gonna, Yeah, just exactly reaffirm exactly what you said. We're working on a contract right now because we ran into someone at talking to them at a table at a conference and asked them, "What are you doing in our state?" And they said, "Nothing. Do you know anyone?" And they're now paying us to do work in our home state. It was literally a random connection at a
Yeah,
conference in another state. And so it just, helps to reaffirm the value in that one connection makes it worthwhile for every conference that we go to this year. And so, sometimes we think, well, when am I going to get value of that? You'll get value if you want value from that. And so I just remind people that it really
absolutely.
does come down to intentionality when you're attending
Absolutely.
conferences.
Absolutely. Before we go, let's talk about the recovering politician self-care policy of the week. So I broke one of my rules, man, just this week. I have a what's called a shutdown ritual. I'm a Michael Hyatt fan. I have a full focus planner, and we shut down your office at work. And my normal shutdown is around 4 o'clock, 4:15, because I'm out the door by 4:30. I start like closing up my computer, writing down things on my to-do list for the next day, making sure, I say goodbye to the people, whatever. My lights off, and I'm out the door. And then there was another day this week that did not happen at all. But I haven't been as accessible to my staff, and they have grievances. If you've ever had staff, you have grievances. And instead of following my own schedule and doing what I know is right, I took the opportunity, and it's my fault, to stay too late. And that just messed up the rest of the evening. It's like it starts rolling into then you're kind of later for supper and you're later to get to what you're doing and you're later. And I just reminded myself that's why I have the schedule that I have. And I feel silly sometimes that you just have to leave the office at a certain time, but that leaving that little door open just messed up the rest of everything. And so I just reminding myself that that's why I have those schedules. That's why I turn off computers at a time because my life is not work. And the only way to remain any kind of balance and to go home on time and to be present for dinner, for somebody making me dinner, is to be consistent about that. And so it was just an opportunity to be like a reminder. That's why I have those routines and I need to stick by them because they work. And so it's more of I'm going to double down on my routine and do it consistently because that's what's best for my schedule and my life. So my own fault, I blew it, but it just was a reminder that that's why it just helps me keep my self care. So I don't know if you ever have any kind of those situations with work for you, because for you, work could be all kinds of hours. So how do you shut that down?
Yeah, it's harder when you're working from home and as fluid and flexible as I am. It's different when you're in an office working for someone, Renee. And so,
Yeah.
I have found differences when I'm home. And this week has been just I haven't been traveling a lot, and a huge amount of travel is coming up, like in the next 3 weeks, where I'm going to be gone a lot. And so it was, I got the opportunity to take the dog to the vet, go to the dentist, kind of mix things in. And so it's been a lot more fluid for me. And so sometimes I just get up and go run at 3 p.m. is kind of my ideal window to run these days. And so, but then I come back and do work, right? So it's just a lot more fluid working from home. So, I'm kind of working on how do I create better structure around that, because when times are busy, it's just too easy to walk in the office and do some stuff,
Absolutely.
for an
Absolutely.
hour. And
Yeah.
so it's something I have to be mindful of,
Yeah.
certainly.
I agree. So today we talked all about how to conference and how to conference well, and we would find ourselves to be conference experts at this point in time. We should do another whole one of these about how to schedule and not schedule conferences because we know how to do them well and how to not do those
Yeah.
well too, because we've seen them done great and seen them done terrible. But hopefully today you could see that you can structure and have goals on what you want to get out of conference opportunities. And if you're an attender and your company is sending you there, they want you to come back with valuable insights and connections and all of those things. So it's you can structure that in a way to be able to show value that it's worth it for you to go to this, not only for your own maybe refreshment, but that you bring value back to the business. And I am a person that can tell you in our business life as Rural Policy Partners, but also in my parole life, I have absolutely seen this work. And so there's great things you could do. So I encourage you to go out and find that conference you want to attend and go out and do it well because you too could benefit from all the things that there are to offer. Before we go today, don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube. If you leave us a positive review, we'll send you a prize. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.